If your mission is to gain comprehensive knowledge, and fast, you are in exactly the right place. Today, we're taking a deep dive into the absolute origins of human record keeping.
We're talking about the genesis of writing itself,
And we're going to focus on cuneiform, the script that recorded, what, 4,000 years of civilization?
at least. We're drawing on the deep expertise of a British museum curator who has dedicated decades to deciphering the ancient languages of Mesopotamia, Sumerian, Akkadian, Babylonian.
Okay.
And our mission here is to really extract the crucial insights about what is, you could argue, the greatest intellectual achievement of mankind, turning thoughts into visible, permanent symbols.
And the central puzzle we're tackling today is this. How could such a complicated, almost cumbersome system of writing,
Right.
one reliant on thousands of different signs, last for nearly 4 millennia? It endured from the rise of cities to the collapse of empires, all before the alphabet finally took over.
To understand that longevity, we have to start at the beginning. We need to go to Mesopotamia, the land between the Euphrates and Tigris rivers, around 3500 BC.
And their primary resource there wasn't paper or stone. It was clay.
Clay, exactly. It was everywhere. So clay tablets became their universal operating material, their paper, their hard drive, their entire library.
The breakthrough then, the moment that really defines writing, wasn't just drawing a picture, it was something else.
It was an intellectual leap. It's when you have an agreed system where a physical sign doesn't just represent the thing anymore, but it represents the sound of the word for that thing.
So in the very beginning, it was just pictures for things.
Extremely limited, yes. They used simple pictographs. A drawing of a barley stalk meant barley. A drawing of a foot meant foot.
Good for admin, I'd imagine.
It was perfect for simple records, how many bushels of grain were sold. But it couldn't capture grammar or proverbs or complex narratives. It was a ledger, not literature.
So what was the aha moment, the thing that unlocked all of history for them?
It was when they realized they could decouple the image from the object and link it purely to sound. So if the picture of a foot now represents the sound of the word foot, that sign can be used to express that sound in any word.
Regardless of what the original picture was.
Exactly. And that realization just liberated writing. Suddenly they weren't just listing objects anymore. They were recording the full scope of spoken language.
And this evolves into the script we call cuneiform.
Right, which is a term meaning wedge-shaped, and it just refers to the triangular impressions the reed stylus made in the wet clay.
And what's startling, from our sources, is the flexibility of this system. You'd think with all that complexity it would be rigid, but no.
Not at all. A well-trained scribe could actually capture the sounds of Sumerian, Babylonian, or even a previously unknown foreign language purely by ear.
Just by using the existing signs to approximate the new sounds?
Yes. But here's where they had an immediate crisis, a self-imposed one.
Which was...
As new signs were invented for new concepts, the whole pool of signs began to grow exponentially. If every generation just kept adding more, the system would collapse. No one could possibly remember them all.
Okay, so how did they stop that? How did they preserve this massive achievement?
They invented the first systematic knowledge organization system. They called it lexicography. This was early in the 3rd millennium BC.
They created the world's first dictionaries.
Dictionaries, encyclopedias, you name it. They rigorously standardized the signs.
The spinal cord of a civilization, really.
Precisely. They created systematic lists. Lists of all things made of wood, lists of gods, lists of colors. This standardization was so effective and so jealously guarded that it preserved the cuneiform system for millennia.
So a scribe in late Babylon could still read the earliest documents.
Because of that rigor, yes.
That longevity, 3-4 millennia, is just incredible. So let's pivot. When the system finally dies out, how did modern scholars even begin to crack a language that no one had spoken for centuries? We needed some kind of cheat sheet.
And we found it. It's called the Basutan inscription.
Okay.
This huge inscription was carved high up on a cliff face by the Persian king Darius. And the crucial part is, it was written in 3 languages: Old Persian, Elamite, and Babylonian.
So you have a parallel text.
You have a parallel text.
Yeah.
The breakthrough came from the Old Persian part. It was still cuneiform, but it used a much simpler, almost alphabet-like version of the script.
So you could read that first.
Scholars could read the repeated royal names, like Darius, in the simple version, and then find those same patterns in the really complex Babylonian column.
And from there, you can start to fill in the blanks.
Once they isolated key names and words, they could leverage existing Semitic dictionaries, comparing the Babylonian text to related languages like Hebrew and Arabic. It was an astonishing feat of detective work.
Speaking of detective work, This leads us to a really controversial theory that sort of messes with the accepted timeline of writing.
It does. The long-standing rule is that pictographs had to come first, slowly evolving into phonetic writing. But our sources suggest this progression might be, well, misleading.
How so?
The expert we're drawing on suggests the phonetic system might have been developed much earlier, maybe even alongside the pictographs. He offers this powerful metaphor. Our recovered clay tablets, maybe a few 100,000 of them, they are just a single raindrop compared to the entire waterfall of history.
So if the tablets are only a raindrop, what are we missing from the waterfall?
We're missing the perishable materials.
Yeah.
The vast majority of early writing was probably on palm leaves, leather, wood, things that just disintegrated. The idea that writing started with the clunkiest system pictographs is a bit counterintuitive.
And there's actual physical evidence for this, isn't there? Something that pushes writing way back.
There is the Göbekli Tepe. It's a small, round, green stone found at the 9000 BC site in Turkey, and it has clear hieroglyphic signs on it.
9000 BC.
I mean, that suggests an official stamp, a form of administrative writing, existed 7,000 years before our earliest Sumerian evidence.
And this completely challenges that old rule that you need big cities to have writing.
It does. Göbekli Tepe's massive architecture required immense planning. You can't organize the labor for that without advanced communication. The writing was likely already there, just on materials that didn't survive.
Let's get into the mechanics of the script itself then. We know it wasn't an alphabet. How did it actually work?
The key is that cuneiform writes in syllables, not single letters. They had signs for vowel-consonant combos, like AB, or consonant-vowel combos, like BA. They had no simple sign for just B or S.
So if you wanted to write a word like, say, museum, you couldn't just write M-U-S-U-M.
No, exactly. You'd have to break it down into syllables. So you'd write a sign for MU, a sign for ZE, and a sign for UM. The reader would be trained to just squash those three sounds together to get museum.
That sounds incredibly difficult to master.
It is, and it's compounded by something called multivalency.
Which sounds like a nightmare for a student scribe.
It was. Multivalent means one sign could represent multiple sounds and multiple distinct meanings.
Oh, wow.
So imagine a single sign that could mean day or white or just the syllable zal. The scribe had to use context to figure out the correct reading.
So this required just intense intellectual training. A scribe had to master not only Akkadian, which is a Semitic language,
Related to Hebrew and Arabic, yes.
but they also had to master Sumerian.
And that brings us to the most unique detail about Sumerian. It's a language isolate.
Meaning it has no relatives on Earth, no known relatives.
None. Not a single one. It is not related to any other known language in the world today, and this is profound. It suggests that while we have the Sumerian records, the massive family of related languages, the linguistic cousins that must have existed alongside it, are now entirely gone forever.
We have no idea what they sounded like, what wisdom they held.
Nothing, just silence.
So when we read these tablets, we are truly accessing the work of a tiny, privileged, literate class, the scribe.
Who held immense power, yes. And the language they recorded, Babylonian in particular, was magnificent in its richness and its subtlety.
And that subtlety is key when we look at their philosophical texts, especially the thousands of tablets about omens.
Right. These texts were designed to predict and manage the future.
Can you give us an example of an omen?
The classic one is, if a lizard runs across the breakfast table, the queen will die. Now, the standard modern translation renders this as a strict conditional, A equals B. If X happens, Y will happen.
But our source argues the translation is, well, it's folly. It misses the whole point.
It does, and largely because of a subtle grammatical limitation in written Akkadian. It lacked modal verbs.
Words like could, might, or should.
Exactly. So imagine the chief diviner telling the king, the queen will die. If she doesn't, he's disgraced. If she does, he could be implicated. It's a no-win.
So the limitation of the script itself, the lack of the word might, it forced their thinkers to become masters of implied nuance.
Absolutely. The diviner must have understood that A meant B could be or B might happen. It was a signal that required immediate ritual action to defer the danger. The complexity wasn't in the text itself. It was in the sophisticated interpretation required by the reader.
This really defines translation not as a simple word-for-word swap, but as an art form. Part archaeology, part detective work.
And part poetry, for sure. A subtle change in one word can alter the entire philosophical meaning of a 4,000-year-old text.
This level of abstract thought wasn't just for philosophy, though. It informs their myths, like the Ark tablet.
Dated to 1700 BC. It predates the biblical Noah story by over 1,000 years.
This is the Babylonian flood myth. So why did their gods send the flood?
The gods decided the human population was too noisy. And noise here is probably a euphemism for overpopulation because the gods hadn't yet invented death to control the numbers.
And a hero is warned.
Yes, the god Enki warns the hero Atrahasis and gives him a blueprint for a rescue vessel.
And the most incredible detail from that blueprint is what?
The vessel wasn't an ark at all. It was round. A massive, circular coracle designed to float on the waters, not to sail.
And the connection to the biblical story is not just a coincidence.
No, there's absolute certainty of literary dependence. One story inspired the other. The shared details, like releasing 3 specific birds to see if the land was dry, confirms it. The flood myth is just this irresistible literary tool used over and over to punish people for X.
But it wasn't all doom and philosophy and round boats. Cuneiform also preserved the rules for just having fun.
From global disaster to the royal game of
Tell us about that.
It's a 20-square board game found in royal graves around 2600 BC, and it was massively popular, lasted for nearly 3,000 years. It spread all the way to Egypt.
Tutankhamun had one, didn't he?
He had boards in his tomb, yes. It just shows that the human desire for, safe rivalry is eternal.
And we know how to play it today because the rules were written down on a tablet.
A late cuneiform tablet, yes. It's a race game. It relies on rolling dice or knuckle bones, so it's this mix of pure probability and strategy. You're constantly balancing the luck of the throw with how you position your pieces.
The perfect synthesis of fate and free will.
And it satisfies that timeless human need for time pass and provokes what our source wonderfully calls solitary benevolent fury when you win or lose.
As we bring this all together, what stands out is just the sheer audacity of ancient thought. From inventing the dictionary to preserving the rules of a game that lasted millennia.
Their systems were designed for endurance, deep endurance.
For you, the listener, I hope this deep dive confirms that the greatest takeaway from cuneiform isn't just the facts it recorded, but the intellectual rigor it required. These ancient people were fundamentally indistinguishable from us, yet they had to invent every single tool for communicating abstract thought from scratch.
And if we connect this back to that idea of lost history, just consider that detail once more. The Sumerian language is a language isolate.
Unrelated to any other known tongue.
And it was only recorded because scribes from other cultures decided to preserve it. Which raises a pretty sobering final thought. If one of the very first recorded civilizations spoke a language completely separate from our entire linguistic family tree, how many other entire families of human thought, of expression, of wisdom are already gone forever from the archaeological record?
Existing only is the silence between the words we can actually read.
Exactly.
A profound thought to mull over. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into cuneiform and the genius of ancient thought.